I'm Emma, 25F, and I've been living with my roommate Kelly, 23F, for about 8 months. We found each other through a roommate matching app, and things seemed fine at first. We have separate bedrooms, but share the kitchen, living room, and one bathroom. We split rent and utilities 50-50ths. When we moved in together, we agreed that we'd each buy our own groceries and keep our own food separate. Pretty standard roommate arrangement. We designated different shelves in the fridge and pantry, and I thought that would be the end of it. For the first month or two, everything was fine. Then I started noticing small things. My yogurt would disappear faster than I remembered eating it. Leftovers I was saving for lunch would be gone. At first, I thought maybe I was just forgetting that I'd eaten them, or maybe I'd miscounted how many yogurts I'd bought. But then it became more obvious. I'd buy a pack of deli meat on Sunday for the week's lunches, and by Wednesday it would be completely gone, even though I'd only made 2 sandwiches. A container of hummus I'd just opened would be empty the next day. My expensive organic milk that I specifically buy for my coffee would be nearly gone after 1 date. I started paying closer attention and realized Kelly was definitely eating my food. I'd see her making sandwiches with my turkey, using my fancy cheese, drinking my almond milk. When I'd mention it casually like, "Oh, did you use some of my milk?" she'd act confused and say she thought it was communal food or that she'd replace it soon. But she never replaced anything. And after I'd clarify that it was my food, she'd promise to be more careful, but it would keep happening. About 3 months ago, I decided to be more direct. I sat her down and explained that I was on a tight budget and needed her to stop eating my food. I told her that my grocery budget was carefully planned, and when she ate my stuff, it meant I either had to go hungry or spend money. I didn't have to replace it. Kelly apologized and said she understood. She promised it wouldn't happen again and offered to pay me back for what she'd eaten. I said that wasn't necessary, just please stop going forward. It didn't stop. If anything, it got worse. She started eating entire meals worth of my leftovers. I'd make a big batch of soup or pasta on Sunday to eat throughout the week, and I'd come home Monday to find half of it gone. When I'd ask about it, she'd have excuses like, "I was really hungry and didn't have time to cook," or "I thought you were okay with sharing since we lived together." I tried different strategies. I started writing my name on everything with a Sharpie. She'd eat it anyway. I tried moving some food to different areas of the kitchen, but nothing seemed to deter her. I started taking photos of my food when I put it in the fridge, so I could prove it was disappearing. Kelly's response was that I was being weird and controlling about food. The breaking point came 3 weeks ago. I had spent my entire week's grocery budget on ingredients to make meals for the week. I meal prepped on Sunday, made a big pot of chili, some chicken and rice bowls, and overnight oats for breakfast. I specifically told Kelly that this was my food for the entire week and that I was broke until payday Friday. By Tuesday, more than half of everything was gone. Kelly had eaten most of the chili, 3 of my 5 chicken bowls, and several of the overnight oats. When I confronted her, she said she'd been really busy with work and hadn't had time to grocery shop, and she'd pay me back on Friday. Friday came and went. No money, no replacement food. I ended up eating ramen and peanut butter sandwiches for the rest of the week because that's all I could afford. That weekend, I decided I was done. I went to Home Depot and bought a small refrigerator lock, just a simple latch with a combination padlock that goes around the main fridge door. I also bought a locking container for the pantry items. I installed the fridge lock Sunday night and put my food inside, then locked it. I left Kelly a note explaining that since we couldn't resolve the food issue through conversation, I was securing my food to prevent further problems. I told her this wasn't meant to be hostile, but I couldn't afford to keep replacing stolen food. Kelly was furious when she saw it Monday morning. She said I was being ridiculous and that locking the fridge was unhinged behavior. I explained that it was the only solution I could think of since talking hadn't worked. She demanded I remove the lock immediately. I told her no, but that she was welcome to buy her own mini fridge if she wanted more fridge space. She said she shouldn't have to do that in her own home. Tuesday evening, I came home from work to find 2 police officers at my door. Kelly was there with them, and she had told them that I was preventing her from accessing the kitchen and holding her food hostage. I was mortified. I explained to the officers that the fridge lock only secured my food, and that Kelly had full access to the kitchen, stove, microwave, sink, and the rest of the fridge where her food was stored. I showed them that the lock was only on the main compartment where my groceries were, and that the freezer and door compartments were still accessible. The officers looked at the situation and basically told Kelly that this was a civil roommate dispute, not a criminal matter. They said that as long as I wasn't preventing her from using the kitchen appliances or accessing her own food, there was no crime being committed. Kelly was not happy with this response. She argued that I was making the living situation hostile and unlivable, and that the lock was a form of harassment. After the police left, Kelly went to our landlord. She told him that I had installed unauthorized locks on the apartment and was creating a hostile living environment. She demanded that he force me to remove the lock or evict me. Our landlord called me yesterday. He said that while he understood the food situation was frustrating, he was concerned about modifications to the apartment without permission. I explained that the lock was completely removable and didn't damage anything, and I offered to show him exactly what it was. He came by this morning and looked at the setup. He said the lock itself wasn't a problem since it didn't damage the fridge or apartment, but he was worried about the ongoing conflict between Kelly and me. He suggested we try to work out a compromise. Here's the thing, I don't think I should have to compromise. Kelly has been stealing my food for months despite multiple conversations about it. She's cost me hundreds of dollars in groceries and has made me go hungry multiple times. The lock is the only thing that's actually stopped the problem, but now she's escalating everything. She's calling the police, involving the landlord, and telling our mutual friends that I'm crazy and controlling. She's acting like I'm the unreasonable one when all I did was protect my own property. Kelly is now saying that if I don't remove the lock, she's going to move out and break the lease, which would leave me responsible for the full rent that I can't afford. Am I legally required to remove this lock? Can she actually break the lease over this? Is there anything she can do to force me to give her access to my food? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. All I want is to be able to eat the food I buy without having to guard it like a hawk. Edit. People are asking about the specifics of the lock. It's just a basic hasp latch that clamps around the fridge handle and door frame with a small combination padlock. It doesn't go through or into anything, just around the existing handles. Takes 2 seconds to install or removed. Edit 2. Yes, I've been documenting everything. I have photos of my food before and after, receipts for groceries, screenshots of our text conversations about the food issue, and now photos of the lock setup. Update 5 days later. Thanks to everyone who responded to my original post. The situation has continued to escalate in ways I never expected, but I wanted to update you on what's happened since I put the lock on the fridge. After the police visit and landlord meeting I mentioned in my original post, I thought maybe Kelly would back down, and we could coexist until one of our leases was up. I was wronged. Kelly doubled down on her campaign to get me to remove the lock. She started what I can only describe as a psychological warfare campaign to make living there as uncomfortable as possible for me to. First, she began using every single dish, pot, and pan in the kitchen and leaving them dirty in the sink. When I cleaned them to cook my own meals, she'd dirty them again immediately. She said since I was being territorial about food, she was going to make sure I knew the kitchen was shared space. Then she started playing music loudly late at night, claiming she had always done this, and I had never complained before. Not true. When I asked her to turn it down, she said I couldn't control her use of the common areas just like she couldn't control my food. The most bizarre thing was that she started leaving passive-aggressive notes around the apartment. Things like, some roommates believe in sharing and cooperation, taped to the bathroom mirror, or normal people don't need locks to feel safe from their roommates, stuck to the front door. I ignored all of this and just tried to go about my normal routine. The fridge lock was working perfectly. I was finally able to eat the food I bought and my grocery budget was back on track. But then Kelly escalated again. 3 days ago, I came home from work to find that Kelly had bought her own padlock and locked the freezer compartment, which we had always shared, and where I kept some of my frozen vegetables and meat. When I asked her about it, she said that since I was locking up my food, she was doing the same with her freezer space. The problem was about half the stuff in the freezer was mine, and now I couldn't access it. I told her this was different because she was locking up my property, whereas my lock only secured my own food. She said that was my opinion, and that the freezer was shared space that she was entitled to control. I asked her to either remove her lock, or at least let me get my food out first. She refused. That night, I called our landlord again to explain the new situation. He sounded frustrated, and said this was getting out of hand. He asked if we could all meet together to resolve this. The meeting was yesterday evening. Our landlord, Kelly, and I sat down in the living room to try to work things out. Our landlord started by saying that while he understood both sides, the situation was becoming disruptive and he was concerned about complaints from neighbors about the noise and potential lease violations. Kelly immediately launched into a speech about how I was being controlling and unreasonable, and how the lock on the fridge was making her feel unwelcome in her own home. She said she felt like she was walking on eggshells and couldn't relax in the apartment. I calmly explained the months of food theft, the money I'd lost, the multiple conversations we had about it, and how the lock was the only solution that actually worked. I also pointed out that her lock on the freezer was now preventing me from accessing my own property. Our landlord listened to both sides, and then said something that surprised me. He told Kelly that based on what he was hearing, the original problem was her taking food that didn't belong to her, and that my solution was reasonable given the circumstances. He said that while roommate conflicts were unfortunate, I had the right to secure my own property, and that Kelly's escalating behavior was more concerning to him than my lock. He told Kelly that she needed to remove her lock from the freezer immediately and return my frozen food. He also said that if the noise complaints continued, he would consider that a lease violation. Kelly was furious. She accused the landlord of taking sides and said she felt like she was being ganged up on. She said that if this was how things were going to be, she wanted out of the lease. Our landlord said that was her choice, but that breaking the lease would involve penalties and she'd need to follow the proper procedures. Kelly stormed out of the meeting and went to her room, slamming the door. Later that evening, she removed the lock from the freezer, but she also took out everything that was in there, including my food, and dumped it all on the kitchen counter. My food sat there thawing for hours before I got home and found it. I had to throw away about $40 worth of frozen vegetables and meat because they'd been sitting at room temperature too long to safely refreeze. At this point, I'm just done. I documented the food waste with photos and receipts, and I'm going to pursue getting reimbursed for it. I'm also looking for a new place to live because even though I'm technically winning this conflict, living with Kelly has become unbearable. The fridge lock stays on. It's the only thing preventing her from retaliating by eating my food, and frankly, I don't trust her not to tamper with my groceries at this point. I never thought a simple roommate food issue would escalate to police visits, landlord meetings, and psychological warfare, but here we are. Update 3 weeks later. A lot of people have been asking for updates on the roommate situation, so I wanted to let you know how everything resolved. After the landlord meeting I described in my last update, Kelly's behavior got even worse for about a week. She was clearly angry that the landlord had sided with me, and she seemed determined to make my life as difficult as possible. She started doing things like using all the hot water before I got home from work, leaving the TV on loudly all night in the living room, and accidentally unplugging my phone charger from the kitchen outlet every day. Then she began what I can only describe as petty sabotage. She would use my kitchen utensils and leave them dirty and hidden in random places, so I couldn't find them when I needed to cook. She started taking up all the counter space with her stuff, so I had nowhere to prep food. She'd leave the stove burners on, but not lit, so I'd smell gas when I walked into the kitchen. The breaking point came when I realized she was messing with my mail. I had been expecting a few important documents, my car registration renewal and some tax forms, but they never arrived. When I asked her if she'd seen any mail for me, she said no. But then I noticed that she had been getting a lot more packages than usual, and she was always very quick to grab anything that got delivered. I started to suspect she might be intercepting my mail. I decided to test this. I asked my sister to send me a birthday card with a small gift card inside. I tracked the package and saw it was delivered on a Wednesday, but when I got home, there was no package waiting for me. The next day, I saw Kelly using a gift card at the coffee shop near our apartment, the same store brand that my sister had told me she'd included in the card. When I confronted Kelly about it, she claimed she'd bought the gift card herself weeks ago. But when I asked her to show me the receipt, she said she'd thrown it away. I told her I knew my sister had sent me that exact gift card, and that taking my mail was a federal crime. Kelly got defensive and said I was being paranoid and accusatory. She denied taking any of my mail and said the gift card was definitely hers. But I could tell she was lying. She wouldn't make eye contact and kept changing her story about when and where she'd bought it. That evening, I called our landlord and explained what I suspected about the mail situation. He was very concerned. He said that mail theft was a serious issue and asked if I had any proof. I told him about the tracking information showing the package was delivered and about seeing Kelly use the gift card that my sister had sent me. I also mentioned that several other pieces of mail I'd been expecting had never arrived. Our landlord said he would address this with Kelly immediately. He also suggested I file a report with the Postal Service and potentially the police if I wanted to pursue it. The next day, our landlord had a meeting with Kelly. I wasn't there, but apparently he told her that mail theft was grounds for immediate lease termination and that he was considering evicting her based on the pattern of problematic behavior. Kelly must have realized she'd pushed things too far. That evening, she came to me and said she wanted to move out. She said the living situation had become too stressful, and she thought it would be better for both of us if she found a new place. I agreed. At that point, I just wanted her gone, so I could live in peace. She also, and this surprised me, admitted that she had accidentally opened some of my mail thinking it might be hers, and that she'd thrown it away instead of giving it to me because she was embarrassed. She didn't specifically admit to taking the gift card, but she did offer to pay me $25, which was exactly the amount my sister had told me was on the card. I took the money and told her I wouldn't pursue the mail issue further if she moved out promptly and without causing any more problems. Kelly found a new place pretty quickly and moved out last weekend. The whole process was actually smooth. She packed up her stuff and left without any drama. I think she knew she had crossed a line with a male thing, and just wanted to get out before facing any legal consequences. Our landlord found a new tenant within a few days, a graduate student named Marcus who seems really normal and respectful. He moved in 3 days ago, and we've already had a good conversation about grocery arrangements and shared space expectations. I finally removed the lock from the fridge yesterday. It felt symbolic, like I was closing the door on that whole crazy chapter. Looking back, I still can't believe how far things escalated. All I wanted was to eat my own groceries, and it turned into months of conflict, police visits, and what essentially became mail theft. But I'm glad I stood my ground. Kelly was stealing from me and making me go hungry, and I had every right to protect my property. The lock worked exactly as intended. It stopped the food theft and forced the real issues out into the open. My new roommate Marcus and I have already agreed on a simple system. We each have designated shelves in the fridge. We label anything we want to keep separate, and if we want to share something, we just ask first. Revolutionary concept, I know. It's so nice to come home to a peaceful apartment where I can put food in the fridge and trust that it will still be there when I want to eat it. Edit. A few people have asked about whether Kelly faced any consequences for the mail issue. I decided not to pursue it further since she moved out and compensated me for the gift card. But yes, mail theft is a federal offense, and if she had stayed, I probably would have filed a police report. Edit 2. For those asking about the specifics of the lock I used, it was just a basic hasp latch from Home Depot with a small combination padlock. Completely removable, no damage to the fridge. I kept the receipt and packaging in case I ever needed to prove it was temporary and non-damaging.